this moment. All right, so if you haven't had a moment to do so, go ahead and scan the QR code, get signed up for Leland. The number one question we get after these events is, how do I access the recording? You must be signed up for Leland to do so. We want to send it to you. We're going to be sending all finance events via recording at the end of the week. But that said, we encourage you to join live as many sessions as you can, because during our live sessions, we do a lot of live giveaways. And so if you're on, you'll be eligible for like a free coaching session. In our past session, we just gave away $100 in coaching credit. So definitely use the recording only if you're like in class and can't make it, or time zone, obviously, but we strongly encourage you to be here. You can interact with the coaches, you can drop your questions live, and we really want you to get the full value of the event that we have planned for you tonight. So with that, welcome to Breaking into Private Equity, our second session of Finance Week. If you just joined the Breaking into IB event, welcome back. If this is your first session, welcome. We have a lot of things to cover this week. It's going to be very, very exciting. Today specifically is a bit more generic in terms of private equity and breaking into it. We only have 45 minutes, and we're going to hear really tactical tips from our incredible panelists. But then all of Wednesday is focused on workshops around private equity recruiting. So tonight you'll get a really good overview. You'll get tips you can walk away with, and then come back tomorrow for workshops all on IB. And then Wednesday, workshops all on private equity and venture. And then Thursday is kind of our miscellaneous finance day with, things across corporate finance, wealth management. So we'll cover a lot of things along the routes of finance, as well as just advice. You get access to coaches. We'll be doing giveaways. And then at the end of the week, we'll also be sending out a ton of free resources and additional things to support you in your finance journeys. As mentioned, I kind of already broke through what we're going to be doing the next couple of days, but Josh is going to go ahead and drop in the Slack or in the Zoom channel and the Slack the way that you can sign up for each individual session. If you just signed up for this event, that is not enough to get you the Zoom link for all of the upcoming events. You actually have to individually enroll for each, and then you'll get a Zoom link, calendar, and follow-up communications. Make sure to do so. We don't want you to miss out. We have a ton of free value all week long. Every single one of these sessions is free. Craig's going to be teaching a workshop tomorrow. Ash is teaching a one-on-one workshop on Wednesday, where she's going to be leading a group of you through the technical private equity interview. So it's really important that you join and engage in these classes, just because we want you to suck out as much value as you can while it's being offered to you by our incredible coaches and hosts and instructors. So Josh just dropped that in the link. Make sure to sign up, and we hope to see you all week long. Now with that, we also want to be in touch with you. Slack is how we've been engaging with our audience members throughout. Last week we did GMAT GRE week. This week we're doing Finance Week. So you're going to want to go ahead and join the Slack channel. Josh is going to drop it. He just did. I see it there. And we're using the finance channel specifically to communicate throughout this week. There you'll see like discount codes. You'll see giveaways. We're just trying to do everything we can to keep you all engaged and get you communicating with other people who might be going through similar processes as you. And then you can build a network around finance hopefuls and people wanting to break into the space. We also want to be able to drop really incredible resources for free and keep you connected to the coaches who are paneling throughout this week. So go ahead, if you haven't already, join the Slack. It's going to be really important to chat in there. And then we'll also send you the recordings if you've signed up for Leland. Now with that, want to do a quick introduction. My name's Erica. I run experience here at Leland. So coach experience, customer experience, and the broader community experience as well. So I love getting to put on events. We have over 100 planned over the next couple of months, and we hope to see you there. We do these events alongside our coaches to benefit our entire community and to help you, each of you, be successful. So consider me your point of contact if you have any questions. We want to make sure you have an amazing journey using our platform and through our events. So stay in touch, and you'll also see Josh in the chat. He's dropping links. He's our growth and marketing leader and has done a ton to get each of you here today. So really excited for you to get to know him through your journey. And then obviously passing it over to the real stars of the show, which are our incredible panelists this evening. Why don't each of you, Asha, Craig, and Robert, go ahead and introduce yourselves, and then we'll dive into the fun stuff.
Great. Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. So my name is Asha. In terms of background, so I started investment banking. I spent 5 years doing M&A at Deutsche and then 4 years at JP Morgan. And then I moved to the US to do my MBA at Harvard, graduated, and then made the switch to private equity as a senior associate at Apex. And now I've been coaching for 4 years in private equity, and I try to help people in the next generation, either break into investment banking and then PE, or break into PE post banking. So I will pause there and pass it on to Craig.
Thanks, Erica, so much for this. Thanks, Sasha. Hi, everybody. My name is Craig Thompson. I'm coming to y'all from San Francisco. And I guess the most relevant part of my career, I've done a few entrepreneurial ventures in recent years, but started my career at Goldman Sachs, was in the financing group for 2 years before switching to the M&A group, where I was an associate for 1 year. And then from there, went to KR, all 5 years there in New York before doing my MBA at Wharton. Great to meet y'all. Robert, I'll pass it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Craig. And hi, everybody. My name is Rob. And right now I am currently a second-year student at HBS. But prior to that, I worked 2 years investment banking at Perella Weinberg in New York, and then 3 years at a private equity firm called GI Partners out in San Francisco.
Awesome. Fun fact about Rob is he was a Leland intern when he first started business school at HBS. So we're really excited to have him back, this time paneling, and it's great to all be back together. Incredible panelists, as you can see, Asha, Craig, and Rob's experience, all super, super diverse, technical, all the things that I'm sure each of you on this call are hoping to do in your future. So listen to what they have to say. They've come prepared. Many of are also, as mentioned, hosting individual workshops on like kind of more deep dives on the different subject matter. So excited to have them here and really excited to learn from them this evening. Now we want to hear from each of you. Would love to hear what your dream role is. If there's a certain type of private equity you're excited about, maybe you're excited more about like growth equity or venture. Josh is going to go ahead and drop that in the finance channel of our Slack. Again, we said we're going to be using it and we're honoring that. So go ahead to the Slack channel, the link's in the chat, and go respond there. I will go ahead and drop it too again, because I know Josh is going to be in the Slack for those of you who just joined. And then the channel is #finance. And there you'll be able to respond. Perfect. Josh just dropped it in. Let's hear it. What are your dream roles? We want to get to know you. Again, everything we have set up is to help you land your dream role. So it's important for us to know what it is you're trying to achieve. And make sure to use the thread. It's just easier for us to see all at once. And that way your answers don't get lost. So you can just respond directly where Josh has commented and drop your answers there. Awesome. I see a lot of you typing. This is really fun. Great. Growth equity, tech investing, tech PE. Love it. Middle market, growth equity, people coming from consulting. This is great. We're here to help all of you different candidate types break into wherever you want to be. So keep those coming. Again, we're not going to turn the chat off. So keep your answers rolling in and we will dive in now to the Leland overview. If this is your first session done by Leland, welcome. You're probably wondering who we are, what is it that we do? And our number one goal as a company is to help each of you get spots in prestigious companies and grad school programs. Whatever your ambitious goals are, we are here to help. This is probably my favorite slide to show because it just shows that Leland is working thanks to our incredible coach base and our amazing users who are accomplishing big things. I'm sure each of you can kind of see yourself in this slide thinking, oh, I want to like land a job at Spectrum, or I want to get into HBS. I want to land a tech FP&A role. Whatever it is that you're hoping to do, we have helped someone get there through the power of coaching and all of our services. So please see yourself in this. A lot of folks who come on Leland might temporarily feel like an underdog. They might feel like, hey, I don't have a shot at landing this dream job or getting into a top grad school program. But that is not the case. You are all capable of so much, and we want to help you get there through tapping into these resources, people, and knowledge and expertise to make you shine and stand out in the process. Nothing is out of reach, and we want to overemphasize that this evening. So tactically speaking, how do we help people land their goals? Through three main things. One is one-on-one coaching. Josh has been dropping in the links. Both Asha and Craig coach on Leland, so you can access their profile. They can help you one-on-one. They can help you with all different types of services. So think mock interviews, technical interview prep, your story, recruiting, kind of thinking through networking, whatever it is, wherever it is in the journey, they can help with that. Then we also have a lot of group classes and then content as well. We have free events like this one. We have tons of guides. As mentioned, we'll be sending out a lot of our finance related content towards the end of this week if you're signed up for Leland. So keep an eye out on these things and just know we are the one-stop shop for whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. Now let's dive into our panel. Before we start, we want to hear from you. Josh is going to go ahead and drop in the finance channel again. Which part of the PE recruiting process seems to be the most daunting? The reason we want to hear this is because we want to understand what it is that you want help with. What is it that's freaking you out? For a lot of people, that may be the interview process. For others, it might be kind of figuring out how to even get your foot in the door. So go ahead, Josh, drop that in, and then everyone respond. Again, you can keep those answers trickling in, but we want to hear from you, and we want to understand where it is that you're coming for and what kind of value you want to get out of this evening. All right, I see people typing, but let's jump into the panel while people are responding. I'm going to start out with a lighter question, kind of level set, just so you can hear each and every one of our panelists' personal experience, so that when we dive into kind of the deeper questions, you understand where they're coming from based on their own experience. So Asha, let's have you start out with this question, and then immediately after you, Rob, if you want to answer, and then Craig, you can bring us home.
Great, I'll get started. So my personal PE recruiting process was actually during business school. So I started recruiting in second year of HBS. So started in about late fall, and because it was during COVID, it was not the kind of the traditional on-cycle recruiting. It was much more network-based and much more kind of building your strategy with a headhunter to make sure you're connected to all the relevant headhunters, and then just taking part in processes. So it was pretty, I guess it was pretty intense between January and April when I landed my offer. And from there, it was kind of, because I was recruiting for a senior associate role, which is essentially a post-MBA role where you'll be managing the junior team, it was much more stringent on the technical side. So it still had the classic, technical questions, etc., but it was much more focused on what is your investor judgment like? What can you really think through, not just the basic model, but all the complicated model additions that you might need, and much more on the case study and sim evaluation rather than just the model tests that I feel like you might do on the associate recruiting side. Overall, it's quite a lengthy process. So most processes were about an average of 3 to 4 months. So they moved slow, and you kind of waited quite a bit to hear back from round to round.
Awesome. Take it away, Rob.
Yeah, happy to. I think my experiences might be a bit different from Asha's because I was pre-MBA, so I was probably the traditional route of I had accepted an investment banking job out of undergrad, and so then I did on-cycle recruiting. So that meant pretty much showing up in investment banking and immediately reaching out to all the headhunters and talking to all the headhunters, and then pretty much just out of nowhere, there'll be one day where all the headhunters will reach out and say, PE recruiting has started. And usually it's one firm will kick it off. And then it's like a mad rush for about 1 week where you're running around the city of New York, interviewing back and forth, and the PE firms won't let you out of their office if they like you. So you end up sitting in an office for like 12 hours and you don't know if you get a job or not. But I had known that I wanted to be in San Francisco after. So I had a couple days interviews, and then I had a first round with GI Partners on a Thursday, and then they said I did well, and then they booked me a flight, so that I went straight to the airport and flew to San Francisco and had a super day on Friday and got my offer. So it was quick, probably like a 36-hour process, and included flying across the country. But it was probably a painful week, but the pain was shortened by the fact that it was just a week and not extended longer, like maybe Asha's was.
Thanks so much.
Well, man, we have the full complement of experiences here, because I also did pre-MBA recruiting, so going straight to that associate job. But I after my first 2 years in banking, I did internal mobility at Goldman, and I switched to becoming an associate there, and that led to me doing basically immediately after I switched groups off-cycle PE recruiting. And so in my case, it might have been maybe like a 2-week process all told, but it was off-cycle. I avoided that madness. So we can all talk about all of our various different experiences. But for me, I think the one interesting thing in my case is I ended up getting an offer from a middle market PE fund that I ended up turning down without another offer. So can talk a little bit about the experience of getting an offer, going through that process, but then turning it down without an alternative, and then giving it a couple more weeks, and then landing something I was really excited about.
Yeah, Craig, do you want to speak to that a little bit? So it sounds like you did an internal switch and then started the process. Can you speak more to what that looked like? Why did you turn down the middle market offer and then, end up at KKR?
Yeah, and Goldman's formalized this process a little bit in recent years. This was in 2016. I was at the end of my second year as 2014 analyst class. And at the time, they called it like a direct promote to associate. And that was something that I wanted to do. I think you're definitely heavily advantaged coming from, an M&A or a coverage group in investment banking versus a product role. And that was what I was doing for the first 2 years. So that was definitely part of the plan, was that internal mobility. I probably still could have done recruiting as an analyst, but I didn't, a lot out of kind of perceived loyalty to the firm that, maybe is good, maybe I wish I didn't do so much. But that immediate switch process, I think I felt like I went into high gear right away. Like basically I got in the new seat and I was like, okay, this is the experience I want, but really I'm ready for the next experience.
Awesome. I think you might be paused. Is he paused for everyone else?
Too. I had the advantage of seeing a lot of these, the case I think is pre-MBA is pretty similar across firms. So we can all, spend more time talking about that together. For me, my decision to turn down the first offer I got was, I just thought about like, is this an opportunity that I was really excited about? And for me, I just felt like I've worked so hard. I've put my heart and soul into these first couple of years. And I felt like the offer I got from that initial fund, just in talking to the partners there and talking to the other kind of mid-level folks, junior folks there, I just didn't get the same level of enthusiasm that I wanted in that next job. And so I just felt like, hey, I'm going to keep betting on myself. This is the first thing, but it's not the best thing. And ultimately, that was absolutely the right decision for me.
Awesome. Thanks for speaking to that. And I do appreciate how you've already pointed out that we do have a very well-rounded panel, because I think it allows each of you to speak to your own experiences and journeys that might allow someone in the audience to really resonate with. We might get the traditional folks who are going to banking and do what Rob did and get that 36 crazy hours out of the way, or the Ashas who go to business school hoping to lateral into an investing role, or like you, Craig. So really excited to dive in deeper. Thanks for kicking things off. Okay, so we kind of spoke to this. I think we might be able to brush over it, but let's talk about kind of the pre part. I think we talked a lot about like the application and offer process. I have a good indication of what each of you went through there, and I think our audience members do as well. So let's talk about, Rob talked about headhunters. Would love for each of you three, we can now go Craig, Asha, and then Rob. What did you do pre this time kicking off, or when you decided, hey, I want to go into bank or into private equity? What did you do from like a networking, engaging, getting on the radar of these firms, so that when recruiting did kick off, or when you were ready to go through the interview process, you were ready and things were in line? Take it away, Craig.
So just framing it in your starter questions, I feel like, for what is the most surprising part of my process, it was absolutely dealing with recruiters. Most daunting was the case, and I feel like there's like a right answer to that. Like the case is like definitely, like in my experience, was like orders of magnitude the hard thing. And with recruiters, it's really a mindset thing. And what I mean by that is when you're doing campus recruiting, it's sort of this nice world where, you know, colleges tend to curate the folks who come to you. There tend to be a large pipeline of recent alumni who can talk about their experience. You're usually going to a big fund, especially, or a big firm, like especially if you're going into banking, there's like a tried and true process and consistency of experience. But when you're, first off, the recruiters really are the gatekeepers in this space. There's like, you know, 6, you know, at the pre-MBA level that matter. There's maybe 10 at the post-MBA level that matter. And you just have to deal with them. And the main thing that I'll say, and I'll let other folks kind of pick up different bits and pieces, is that remember that with the recruiters, you are the product, not the customer. And that was a really hard mental switch to get in my head, that my incentives were not perfectly aligned with the people who were ostensibly helping me break into these roles. Just to double click on what I mean by that, they get paid based on you landing a job, or said differently, they get paid based on their customer, the private equity fund, hiring a person through them. And so their job is not only to vet people who come through the door and make sure they're able to get an offer, but a little bit, they want you to accept that offer. And that was actually, you know, when I walked away from that offer, literally the recruiter who ran that process, this woman like screamed at me for 3 minutes, telling me I was making the biggest mistake of my life. I was never going to get another offer. She like was absolutely flabbergasted that I would have taken this action that, by the way, like isn't so uncommon. Like people do this. And it's just worth keeping in mind kind of everybody's individual roles and making sure you're understanding, you know, where you fit in.
Awesome. Asha, I know you spoke a little bit already to like while you were in business school talking to headhunters, but is there anything you wanted to add there of like who you chose to engage with and kind of what they did to help you get ready when formal recruiting came around?
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest question was really whether I wanted to cast a wide net and I wanted to try for anything and everything, or I wanted to be more selective. So I think I came from a relatively non-traditional background. I was an international student at HBS. So I felt like I had to cast a wider net, but I knew I wanted to do tech specifically. So I only targeted headhunters which were recruiting for tech roles in PE. So I actually only ended up talking to a couple of them. I do think that, you know, what Craig said was absolutely right. Like, your interests are not going to be aligned with a headhunter. And I work a lot with people now who are coming from maybe slightly non-traditional backgrounds, where we spend a lot of time refining the headhunter strategy, because you want these people on your side and you have to navigate it so carefully in terms of how you interact with them, what you tell them, what you don't tell them, and what kind of, you know, story you want them to tell the fund. At the end of the day, if you want to get feedback when something doesn't go right, you kind of want that rapport with them in the first place, so that if you didn't get an offer, they're at least able to tell you, hey, you know, you got to work on this before your next offer, or your next process, essentially. So I think it's a fine line, but really this is the one thing that I'll say: really reflect on what you're targeting, and then choose who you work with really carefully from there on out onwards.
Thanks so much. And then Rob, if you want to talk to more of like that traditional IB2 PE, like getting ready for that 36 hours, I think that'd be a great place to bring this one home.
Yeah, happy to. And I can't emphasize what Craig said enough. It's just very important to do your own diligence on the companies, because the headhunters will tell you how great the culture is at the firm. They'll tell you how great the returns are. They'll tell you that, oh, it's like a lifestyle job, and then you show up and it's not that. And so it's very important, because they don't get paid unless you sign the contract. But yeah, more on that. So I was fortunate in that I went to Wharton as an undergrad. So by the time I was already like in college, people were already talking about, oh, when you do banking, private equity recruiting is this. Like there was like an infrastructure there that kind of gets you at least mentally prepared for, one, what private equity is, and then two, what you're supposed to do so you can hit the ground running. And then I was fortunate enough to be at a bank where most headhunters would directly reach out to me instead of me having to reach out to them to schedule meetings. So like pretty much like the day we hit the desk, we got emails from most of the main headhunters of, hey, can you schedule a meeting with us? So that part was easier for me. But I would say that one thing that worked well for me is that I told them I was pretty selective. Selective as in, like, I told them like this is the type of job I was looking for, and there was like a rational reason for it. So I told them that I wanted to be in San Francisco. The reason for that being that I wanted to be around tech. My girlfriend at the time, now my fiance, was living in San Francisco. My family was living in California, so it made sense there. And then I told them I wanted to be at an upper middle market fund. And I said the reason for that is I didn't want to work at a mega fund. And the reason for that was because the years prior I interned at Credit Suisse, and I didn't like how big it was, so I moved over to Perella Weinberg. So my career background kind of tracked well with what I was saying I wanted to do. And I think by doing that and telling them what I want, it actually helped, because then in their mind, I didn't become just one of the hundreds and hundreds of first year bankers that they talk to. I was the California one who wants to work somewhere smaller. And I think by creating that little niche, anytime a California PE firm came out, they reached out to me because I probably came up as like, oh, the one who actually wants to move out to the West Coast doesn't want to stay in New York. And because so the day I actually interviewed at GI, the headhunter was there before I met the team, and she's like, "Oh, you're the one that I was looking for. You're the one that wants to move to San Francisco." And so I think that actually helped, and it almost helped me get in the door more than if I had told them I'm open to anything, send all opportunities to me, because it made myself a bit more memorable than the other analysts who were probably a bit more flexible on what they wanted to do.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. That's definitely like very tactical for the audience, especially as they think about engaging with the headhunters and going from there.
And especially as a non-target too, just building off that. Like if you feel like your background in whatever way is not the, you know, the straw man of what, you know, you think it should be or what you think other people are looking for, the more specificity you can apply and the more you can get the recruiters you're working with to see that probability of accepting an offer being really high, that absolutely will be a differentiator for you. Like if you, the more you can learn now about what types of things you're looking for and have some good rationale for why you're interested in those things, the more likely you are to be involved in those flows and be involved in those conversations, those emails, you know, blasts that go out. Just totally agree with everything Rob said.
I love it. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that home. And again, I think it's very tactical too for the audience members who are thinking about their own, you know, why private equity and what style of private equity they want to engage with. Let's talk about this question. So obviously each of you are not currently at your funds. Many of you are in business school. I know Craig's working on an entrepreneurial venture. Ash is coaching and working on other pursuits herself in the investing space. But would love to hear, obviously, when you were at your firm, you were probably involved in some sort of part of the recruiting process and hiring and even speaking to folks who were interested in your funds. What specific skills and qualities did each of your individual companies kind of hone in on and value as you saw behind the scenes as someone who was there actively helping with recruiting? Asha, if you want to start, we'll go to you and then we can follow up with Craig with KKR.
Yeah, of course. So, yes, I was definitely involved with all the recruiting. So I recruited both analysts and associates for our fund and the tech team. I think it differs a lot by analyst and associate because obviously all our analysts are straight out of undergrad, while our associates are almost always after 2 years of 2+ years of banking. So I think on the analyst side first, it was really much more about somebody we felt like we could teach and we could mold, and it could be somebody that, you know, came in with a ton of enthusiasm, really eager to learn, but had a basic foundation in what finance is and understood, you know, some of the basic finance concepts. And I feel that especially if you didn't do a finance major, somebody who was interested in learning more about it was pretty critical. We looked for kind of somebody who was well-rounded as well. It was pretty important for us to know that you had interests that you pursued and you were able to talk to those, and how they were kind of basically showing us what your personality would be like in terms of having you as part of the team. As I'm sure most of you know, PE can involve some pretty long hours. So you want to work with people who you enjoy working with. So finding that person is pretty critical. On the associate side, it was much more what Robert and Craig described, where it was a pretty thorough vetting process. So for the on-cycle recruiting that I did, it was mostly us recruiting as quickly as we could the best possible person that we could find. And, it was first round interviews all the way up until 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning. And you'll be getting them to do case studies if you'd like them. And the thing there was just to move as fast as possible, but being really picky. I think with on-cycle recruiting as well, we really looked for somebody who stood out, because when we were, interviewing 10, 20 people in a day, you very quickly notice somebody who was just extra prepared, just extra technical, had slightly better structured answers to their behavioral questions, what their motivations for joining that particular fund. So in an on-cycle recruiting process, it became much more about who is technically just a shade above everybody else and who is just better holistically. So we spend much more time, especially at the associate position, just focusing on that technical capability and really finding somebody who had that foundation down. So we weren't starting from scratch, but also somebody who had already begun to develop their investor judgment. I think that was pretty core for us, that it was somebody who knew how to think like an investor and not necessarily only as a banker. So we would focus that and get that from most of our technical, but also behavioral interviews that we did.
Awesome. Thanks. Craig, anything you'd add or supplement?
Agree with, basically that exact template I think applied to KKR as well. Just to double click on maybe what Asha means by investor judgment for folks who, that's not a throwaway comment. That is a very specific thing that people are looking for. And I think KKR was no exception. Is there is a level above, is this believable? Which frankly, in investment banking, the quality, like the bar for like quality analysis is this defensible? If I go into a client meeting and I say this, will you get, nodding heads, or could it, pass, one level of a sniff test? But there's a difference between that and would you bet your entire bonus on this year? And like, not only are you so convicted that you're betting your bonus, but that you're betting, like, you're also deferring it for whatever, like 5, 7, 8 years. Like, all of your, like, are you putting meaningful amount of like earnestness into your decisions? And like, just one example of the difference between like, would you bet on it and like, is this defensible, is I like to think about, not to do too much of a sports analogy, but if you think about political commentators, if you think about folks on ESPN who are saying like, oh, like they should do this thing, like that's kind of like the banking client facing level. And that's different from like the practitioners who are actually getting involved. And so a lot of the ways that, I think KKR tries to test that is not only is, the model that is the underlier of your case, technically correct, but what are your interpretations of those results? What are the key risks? Like, what are the things that, you have lingering questions about in your model, other than just like, it's an assumption and you just put that in there because like you needed an assumption there.
Sweet. Thank you. Yeah, I love that advice. I love kind of taking it the next level. Obviously, you have to pass the technical bar. Ash is going to be doing a workshop. Josh, if you don't mind dropping that workshop in the finance chat, but then taking it to the next level of, okay, you nailed it. You got the numbers right. But then how do you analyze the information? How do you think, and how do you show that is going to be what really pushes you to the next level? And then I think this actually segues perfectly to how do you practice to be ready technically for the interviews? Obviously, that's a huge part. It sounds like that's like the minimum bar you have to pass, is just getting the technical interview right. But would love to hear what that looks like from a prep standpoint. Rob, if you want to speak to this, would love to hear kind of what your first few months of banking looked like to be ready for PE. And if it did also extend even before that.
Yeah, truthfully, I don't think there's a lot in your first probably 2 months of banking that you're going to be doing that's going to help with technicals. In that you're likely probably going to be staffed with another analyst that's a little more senior, and you're truthfully probably going to be like moving logos around a page and making text edits. But you can make it sound like you help more. So I think part of what technically is when you're sitting in with meetings with more senior people in banking, think about like listen about like the rationale of like why they think we want to advise this company to buy that company, or why this company should sell itself to that company. Because I did get a good amount of questions on that of, it looks like you worked on this deal or pitch or deal of these two media companies. Why did you guys think that was the correct decision? And did you agree with what your partners said? And I think making sure you have a position there, regardless of if you built the model or not, it can kind of give what Craig said of that like deeper level of thought that might separate you. And then with the free time that you have, whether that's on weekends or after work, just I think if you're at a bank or if you're at a consulting firm, there might be like some junior resources of like, here's a practice LBO. That's pretty much all I did, which is just learn how to build an LBO. And what that means is learn how to build an LBO starting with a blank Excel sheet and no shortcuts. So like you might have like a FactSet shortcut or a CapIQ shortcut. If you use none of that and you only use a Microsoft's own shortcuts, can you take a blank Excel and build an LBO out of that? Because that was, at least for associate recruiting, what the case study was. They give you like a couple pages on a company, you build an LBO and you tell them what price they should pay and whether you think they should buy the company or not, for whether that's quantitative or qualitative reasons. So that's largely what I did, which was just learn how to do an LBO cold. And then when you're actually in banking, try to learn to see if you can remember and memorize and like learn what the rationale for the advice that you're giving your clients are, versus just doing the logo moving or just the text edits or just the price stock or the stock price pages.
Thanks so much. Asha, I know you've been doing a ton of coaching on Leland with your clients, specifically around technical prep. Is there anything you would add to Rob's answer that you make sure to do with clients to help them nail this portion of the interview?
No, I think Rob covered it pretty well. I think I'll just emphasize the point around understanding why you're doing this, just rather than just memorize the mechanics of the model. Because I think the thing that I see the most, and the part that I spend the most time working with candidates on, is really just figuring out, okay, you made this goodwill adjustment to your balance sheet, but do you understand why? Do you understand what it means? Do you understand why you're amortizing it over time? And I think it's that I feel you just don't do as much of in banking, to be fair, or in consulting, or whatever background you're coming from. So getting that muscle exercise where you just get used to asking yourself why you're making certain adjustments to the model or why you're building certain parts of the model is the most important thing that I can advise that you focus on.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Okay. In addition to the technical prep, what else did you do to get ready for PE recruiting? Craig, I'm going to pass this over to you. I think you talked a bit about this earlier on. So if there's anything you missed out, I think specifically, we get a lot of questions around, okay, a lot of people go straight from banking. Is there anything they need to do like even before banking? Like, is it, having a search fund or a PE internship on their resume that they do maybe in between like their summer internship at a bank and going full time, or they're doing a lot of like coffee chats with PE folks? What does that look like outside of just preparing your technical skill set?
I think if you're already in a position to be joining as a full-time analyst at an investment bank, there isn't that much else you need to do. Like, I wouldn't worry too much about, like the search funds, by the way, I think is a phenomenal source of internship opportunities, particularly in semester internship opportunities for people who are trying to get that, investment banking internship or full-time role. But once you have that full-time role, that kind of is the credential you need. honestly, like, the technical prep you can put in, I think is really valuable and important. I saw a lot of, people asking about networking in the Slack channel, and it really is just about getting in front of those recruiters, those headhunters, and impressing them. Like the networking at the pre-MBA level, I think is a lot less important for private equity recruiting than it was for investment banking recruiting.
Okay, that's going to be something people really want to double down on. So I'll double click. Is there anything, we talked a lot about like the headhunter recruiter networking that goes into it. Did you do anything with like folks at KKR or other firms you were interested in to have even something maybe to speak about in your interviews, or what did that look like?
Perhaps I should have. I did not. And I don't think that was an impediment. The first time I met anyone who worked at KKR was when I was doing my screening, first round interview call.
Awesome.
But I caveat, my personal experience was having come from like a big kind of brand name investment bank. And I think there are definitely elements where that can be very helpful, for a lot of people. So I don't want to say that my experience is like what everybody should do there.
Great. Okay, let's hop to the next one. Any other like what can folks do to stand out? I think we talked about like the investor mindset, obviously, getting in front of the right recruiters. Rob talked about being specific in terms of what he was hoping to get out of where he wanted to be, what kind of fund. Is there anything that we've missed today as we kind of wrap up? And then are there any common mistakes each of you have seen that you want to speak to? Why don't we go Rob, Asha, and then Craig, and you can kind of do it rapid fire. No need to double down just as in the interest of time, but would love to make sure we're covering everything that would be helpful for our audience members.
Yeah, I think one of what I said about being specific about what you want, I think that was super helpful. And I think another one that kind of goes understated in interviews, like I said, I think I agree with Craig. I didn't meet anyone at GI until I interviewed with them, and I think networking is probably more important for banking than it is for PE, at least before the interview process. But they understand that, especially if you're doing on-cycle recruiting, especially that it's early and earlier now, they understand that you likely don't have a lot of experience in banking. And because of that, I think they might be a little bit more lenient on technical softness, I would say. But what's very important is whether they think that you are intellectually curious enough to kind of get over that learning curve. And two, what's very underrated is if you can pass an airport test, which is if I'm stuck in an airport for however many hours because we're delayed, do I want to spend time with this person? And I think that can come off pretty, if you go in very, very, I want to say like intense of like, oh, this is how much I love finance. My hobbies are stock picking and this and that, like show that you're like a well-rounded person outside of that. And I think that's something that a lot of people might make mistakes around at least during the recruiting stage.
Awesome. Asha, Craig, anything you'd like to add here before we wrap things up?
I would just say plan ahead. I'm working with someone now who's left it a week before their on-cycle interviews to start preparing an LBO for the very first time. That is not enough time to learn how to do a model. So if you're planning on getting into PE, the earlier you start is better. So you're less stressed when you're in banking and you just have a longer runway. So I think that's the main thing that I would say.
Thank you so much. Craig, anything to bring us home?
Last thing I'll say is don't conflate logo brand recognition with quality. For investment banking, the big name banks and the big boutique firms are often the best opportunities for you. But I promise for everyone listening that there's at least 20 private equity funds that you've never heard of that are like consistent top quartile performers. You're going to learn from the best, smartest investors, and that's going to set you up for your career. So don't be, seduced by a logo or focus on that as the thing. Focus on, the raw intelligence and horsepower of the investors you'll be learning from.
I love it. That's an awesome note to end on. Thank you so much, panelists. Asha, Craig, Rob, this was super helpful. Again, everyone, thank them in the finance chat. We're so grateful for your time and expertise. As you all know, this was just kind of our kickoff into private equity. And then all of Wednesday, we have 3 kind of highly tactical workshops to help you take things the next level in terms of networking, technical prep, and then and Ask Me Anything kind of office hour style event. So we'd love to see you at each of these. Josh is going to drop that in the finance chat. And with that, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, each of our panelists, and thank you to our attendees. And we wish you the best in your PE recruiting process and hope to be on this journey forever with you. Thanks again, and wishing you all the best.